Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? OTAs. What realistically should I or a Saints fan or anybody expect to see or take away from an OTA?
It's so tough, Matt. They don't wear pads yet. They're all in shorts. They're no contact. They're walking through, and it'll be true of minicamp as well. It'll be true of the first 3 or 4 days of training camp before they bring the pads on. So, anything you're seeing competitively is really hard to say, it's definitive. We do really get a good feel for the passing game, though. I mean, the most of our observations will be about quarterbacks, receivers, and defensive backs. And you'll get some one-on-ones, who's covering a guy down the field, and you'll see a lot of that. But I think that contributes to the fact that if you look through the history of summer splash reports, receivers will very often get overhyped this time of year. Like, this guy looks great. He makes 4 great catches at practice. You never hear anybody saying how great a defensive tackle looks in OTAs, right, because they're going through the motions. I remember Zach Street had a great line one year where he said his goal was to keep Cameron Jordan healthy. That was his number one goal.
Properly stated. One of the things we talked about initially, though, was how many veterans were not there for the first round of OTAs. Yeah. Was the attendance, and I guess notably Jarvis Landry, right? Was the attendance significant for the second round?
No. This will be the third week this week, and next week will be minicamp, which is mandatory. So if somebody is not at mandatory minicamp, you really want to know why. I will agree with you, though. The attendance is lower than it has been in most years. But also, we haven't had an OTA in 3 years. So there's a little bit of an evolution here. I actually remember 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, Mark Ingram decided, you know what, I decided to train in Florida. I'm not holding out for a contract extension. It's just what he decided to do. He didn't, he felt like that'd be better for him and his workout regimen. And, there could be some element of that, too. These players the last couple of years worked out on their own the entire offseason. Don't show up until training camp. There were no OTAs. There was no minicamp because of COVID in 2020. And then last year, Sean Payton decided, let's kind of do what we did last year. And if they liked the way that worked for them, if they liked the way their bodies felt doing that, that could have something to do with it. So I don't think that means Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore and everyone else we haven't seen is holding out for a contract extension. Certainly not in Marshawn Lattimore's case. That's not the case.
Sure.
So it could be sort of just individual choices about, OTAs are about installing the playbook and they feel like, they don't need to be a part of that. But if we see some people missing during the 3 days of minicamp next week, we'll be head scratching and wondering why. But the one attendance thing that stood out most to me was that Michael Thomas was here doing his rehab. Even though we haven't seen him on the practice field, that is obviously a positive sign compared to last year, when there was a lack of communication between the two sides. It's just the latest sign that they're on the same page. There are still some question marks about Michael Thomas's health and how soon that ankle will be 100%. But I think it was a further sign that, his commitment to the team is strong right now.
Mike Triplett's with us. Now, you did just say that sometimes people overreact to receivers. Like, did you see the catch? Well, I'm going to ask you about a receiver because Jarvis Landry was there. So what was your impression seeing Jarvis Landry in the black and gold for the first time?
Well, I have a positive and a negative impression of Jarvis Landry. First of all, I feel like if Jarvis Landry and Drew Brees spent their entire career together, he'd average 150 catches a season. So it's kind of too bad that Jarvis Landry has never paired with Drew Brees in his prime. And I do actually wonder how Jameis Winston is going to work with Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry and Alvin Kamara, all guys who could catch 100 balls a season in the short and intermediate range, which is obviously not Jameis Winston's favorite pass. But the thing that stands out to me in a positive way with Jarvis Landry is I mean, last year we suffered through a really, really tough receiving core to watch. They've got guys who belong on NFL rosters. I think highly of Marquez Callaway and Deontay Hardy, and even Tre'Quan Smith, when he's been healthy, has done some good things. But just the amount of guys who weren't getting open last year, the amount of guys who weren't catching the ball when it was placed in a place where they could catch it. Jarvis Landry, just seeing him on the practice field, he's a pro, and it came across. I mean, he was the go-to guy for. It was only Indy, whether it was Winston or Dalton or Book throwing it to him. He was a go-to guy. He was getting open in traffic. The other thing that Bolt, I know Nick Underhill wrote about this last week. We were commenting to each other. I said, "Oh, you should have heard what he said to this guy that was trying to knock the ball out of his hand." He goes, "Oh, it's funny because over here he said this to the guy." He was asked about it afterward. He said, "I'm not a trash talker, but I'm competitive," and he wasn't afraid to chirp out there. So they're just bringing, a really proven veteran to a position group that was missing that so much last year.
Impressions of Jameis and the quarterbacks?
Well, I mean, it's just nice to see Jameis out there 7 months after he tore his ACL. So that's a positive sign that everything is on a good timeline with his recovery. I mean, ACLs used to be scary, and now seven months later, he's out there taking just about every snap in practice. And Andy Dalton is obviously, I mean, I don't think there's probably a better, I mean, I guess to maybe make an argument for Teddy Bridgewater in Miami, and maybe I'm forgetting someone else, but what an option to have back there. I mean, it's just such a reminder that, oh my gosh, this guy's like won 100 NFL games and playoff, been to the playoffs multiple times, and especially last year. It's another position group where we had to suffer through some of the people who were playing at quarterback because the Saints went through 4 of them in one season, and what a nice backstop that is. So I mean, I think that position is in as good a shape as it's going to be when you consider what they've spent on it. I mean, there's a lot of teams spending $40 million on their quarterback, and the Saints have a as good as you can. I think as much bang for the buck you could make a comparison for everyone that doesn't have Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Pat Mahomes out there.
Before you go, Mike, you did have a nice write-up on Abram Smith, rookie out of Baylor, and I mean, I'm anticipating he makes this team. I know that there's a lot of people who feel the same way. Can you maybe just elaborate a little on where Abram Smith fits in here when we've seen the Saints over the years have a lot of success with undrafted rookie free agent running backs?
Sure.
And where he might fit here? Well,
the opportunity is great because even if he doesn't make a huge instant impact this year, maybe Alvin Kamara's suspension doesn't even happen this year, depending on how long that court case takes, or maybe it's not as long as we think it's going to be, and he stays healthy, and maybe Mark Ingram stays healthy. But Mark Ingram is, I think, 32 years old right now, and he's in the final year of his contract. And then Tony Jones Jr., they liked what they saw from him last year, but, he didn't live up to their expectations, so there's a wide-open battle there to be the next running back in line. And they didn't draft one, and they haven't signed one in free agency, even though they talked to Sony Michel and have kicked the tires on other guys. So there's room in this backfield, and I don't think any of us would have been surprised if they would have used a second-round pick on a running back or a third-round pick or any pick. And instead they get a guy that a lot of people probably thought should have been going a lot earlier in day 3. I mean, he ran for over 1,600 yards last year for a top 5 team in college football, and he had to go the undrafted route. So obviously there's a lot of talent there. So you've got talent and opportunity, and that's usually a pretty good combination for an undrafted rookie.
He can play linebacker too, Mike. So I mean, maybe we can run him.
That's why I wrote about him. I didn't write about him because look, like I just told you. If anybody tells you, this running back is tearing up OTAs, it's like based on what? Nobody tried to tackle him, and they're not wearing pads. But he certainly looks the part. He's a big guy, but I'm just so fascinated that he didn't just play linebacker either. As a junior, the final 4 games of the season, he led them in tackles every game. He was their leading tackler, and they're like, hey, do you want to try coming back to running back? And he said, yeah, I'll try it. And he runs for 1,600 yards. That speaks highly, but where we will see him on the field, and the reason they tried him out at linebacker in the first place at Baylor is because he was dominating on special teams and coverage units, and that's the first thing Dennis Allen mentioned too. So if you have the office pool and all your friends are watching a baseball game right now. That's your lock. That's my guy. That's my undrafted rookie that makes the team right there. Is Abram.
He is Mike Triplett. He's on Twitter at Mike Triplett. You can read his stuff at ESPN.com. Be sure to go read that piece about Abram Smith. It's good stuff. Mike, we appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.